Everyone is vulnerable to being pinned when life plays hardball, whether it is a physical or mental health condition. No one can stand alone. For those who are not pinned, appreciate that it could be you or loved one someday. So when you see a chance to help someone, please do. They are not weak, they are pinned. Even a slight hand up and a listening ear can begin seriously lightening the load, change, or save a life. Help end stigma. Move from being pinned to purpose. Time for a hand up.
Hi, everyone. It's Geoff Moore, the founder of the Pinned2Purpose Podcast. And it's a big thrill for me today to have my guest, Mike VanZetta, who's founder of PiZetta Media, for this conversation. Mike was really kind to have me on his own podcast, and I've learned a lot from him, and I'm continuing to go through the podcast he's done because he's been doing this for a very long time with a lot of inspiring people. So it's fantastic to have him on Pinned2Purpose today. Just for a reminder for people who aren't familiar with Pinned2Purpose, this is an initiative to help to eliminate stigma and give people a hand up on their healing journeys through conversations with people with lived experience, who are caregivers, who are involved and engaged in, promoting the fact that we're all human and we all deserve the respect and the opportunity for healing. And mental health challenges, just like physical health challenges, are part of being human. And again, we all need to respect each other and give ourselves a hand up at times. So I'd like to just read very briefly an introduction with Mike's background, which is very short, and what I'm going to read anyway, which doesn't do him justice, but at least it's a start, and then we'll get into a conversation. So Mike is the founder of PiZetta Media, which is content with a cause and is dedicated to authentic storytelling, spotlighting the unsung heroes on the front lines, the impactful work of nonprofits, and the personal journeys of those navigating mental health challenges. With a mission to inspire empathy and drive positive change, PiZetta's media narratives resonate with audiences, fostering understanding and connection. Through compelling interviews and poignant narratives, PiZetta Media shines a light on the resilience, compassion, and humanity that unite us all. So, Mike, it's great to be here. And maybe I'll pass it over to you for a sec just to introduce yourself further and talk a bit about the origins of your journey, and then we can get into more specific stories.
Yeah, I'm Mike VanZetta with PiZetta Media, and my journey kind of bloomed when I was 37 years old. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder 2 then. So for the longest time, I felt like something was wrong with me. But there wasn't a name or anything for it. So with that, I realized there is nothing wrong with me. I'm just, think differently and do things differently. But having a name helped a lot. So I slowly used my broadcast skills. I was in broadcast for over 20 years. And I started using those skills to talk to people with mental health journeys and, people with great stories, no matter where they are. Because when I was diagnosed, there still wasn't a whole lot of stories about, everyday people struggling with a mental illness and succeeding. So I wanted to create that. And so far, I've gained the trust of a lot of organizations and people to help tell their story.
That's fantastic. And I believe that you're actually an Emmy Award winner. Is that correct?
Yes, it's. I live in the Washington, D.C. area, so I was a newscast director, and we won for the D.C. area for breaking news coverage. So yes, I tried to display that.
Right. No, that's fantastic. And so, prior to being diagnosed with bipolar, how would you have felt about these, mental health challenges or mental health conditions, or was it on your radar much?
The big thing for me is no matter what I had, I didn't want to tell anyone because I didn't want that to ruin my career or have people think of me differently. And that's a lot of the pain for me came from is I couldn't be my true self. I had to fake it to succeed in a career that I loved, but it just, now that I do the stuff, I create it in a way that works for me and feels comfortable for me. But back then I thought if I said anything that I'm, dealing with mental health issues, that I'd be gone.
And what do you think are the roots of that type of stigma or going back in time in society?
I think it's just a way to discredit someone and leave them behind, and then like people get ahead, say, oh, this person is blah blah blah, or mental health issues, get rid of them, and then only the strong survive. Keep your emotions at the door and stuff like that. So I think that is a lot of the stigma, especially for mental health, which hopefully is getting better.
Mm-hmm. It's such a fascinating topic. And as I mentioned, for Pinned2Purpose, the goal is to chip away at that stigma by showing our common humanity and using that bench press metaphor, which actually shows that every single person in the world has multiple breaking points, depending on what happens to them, and can develop mental health challenges. Of course, we all do, and mental health conditions. So it's such an important topic, and I think it's fantastic that you've been leading for a long time now, bringing forward through your skills of media production and interviews and talking to so many people. I mean, there's again, I've watched some of the podcasts that you've done. I'm grateful to have been on one, but maybe I can start asking you about the beginnings of that journey, some of your first podcasts, and then we can go along to talk about some of your favorite ones or some of the key examples that have really stuck out to you in the people that you've spoken to.
At first, I was pretty nervous to actually be on camera, because a lot of the first ones that I did, I cut myself out and all that. So this mission was too important for me. So I knew I needed to shake the nerves off and be a good host and do my research and all that. So that was the start of just being on camera and talking to people and trying to research their stories the best I can. And then I felt more comfortable. And with that comfortability, it made me feel more open to use my story into the telling. So I tell a lot of my story to show relatability to my guests and realize I'm not just trying to pick their story. I'm excited to have a conversation like what you do. It's just exciting to talk to people with lived experiences, and it feels like you're not alone. So that helps a lot. And then with that, I think I got better with the podcasts, and over 400 episodes now. So I'm lucky people still want to talk to me.
Oh, absolutely. And I know you've got over 100,000, followers, which is tremendous. I'm at the beginning of my journey, and I know that it's an organic one, but the stories that you tell, they get more and more visibility because people can relate or are inspired by them. I know that you've also broken down, or you've categorized different podcasts in different themes. So I wanted to know if you could tell us, tell the listeners or viewers a bit about that as well, and then talk about, go through a couple of themes and some examples.
Yeah, the two big ones is called You Matter, and that's talking about people that helps other people out. So if it's a nonprofit or all that, so people can listen and know they're not alone. So that one is important. And then Inspiring Leaders, which is similar, but it's a lot of people who have a great message and a great story that could help others. And then I do PiZetta Media on Location. I do a lot of mental health stories all around, shooting video, high quality stuff. And then just some other things. I try to do sports content. I know a friend of mine, he owns a women's tackle football team. So I like doing stories about them, and I have access. So that's really cool.
That's fantastic. And I think among in that, you have like first responders right?
Yes.
As one of the groups. And maybe you can talk a bit, because I always found it ironic, caregivers do care. They're doing such important work in the world, and yet caregivers are exposed to a lot of pain, a lot of challenging situations often, and that can really affect their own well-being. So, I think among the first responders, we're talking about police and fire. I believe military is in that category in some cases as well, right? But
Yeah.
I wonder if you could talk about an example or two that has maybe stood out for you in terms of conversations you've had with first responders.
Yeah, one of the big things 2 years ago, I went to a firefighter conference. So I got to talk to all the nonprofits that help firefighters, and then talk to a lot of firefighters about their mental health. And, they're going through it. They're a part of like someone's worst day, and they got to be tough and strong for them. And then, they're dealing with life as well. So it is challenging for them. And sometimes, the stigma's there with first responders. So just giving them an outlet to talk and hear these stories is what I am trying to do.
No, that's fantastic. And do you, what is on the horizon for you these days in terms of what are you excited about, or some of your upcoming podcasts that or people that you're connecting with for future podcasts?
Yeah, here I live in Prince William County, Virginia, and they're creating a crisis receiving center to help people instead of, getting arrested and going to the hospital for a mental health crisis. They could come here and get everything they need. And it's one of the first ones in the United States, but I did a mini documentary about it, and then I want to do more stories. It's opening up in October, because I think that's important, because you're afraid to call if you're going through a crisis, if you think that's going to end in handcuffs. So this won't end in handcuffs, and you have professionals ready to support. So I think a lot more people should know this is going on.
And is this a program that has been, that is being, they're using the model that's worked well somewhere else, or is this quite a new one? Or
they're using a model. This is the first one that's connecting. There's an adult section and then a teen, young adult section. So, but it's Connections Health. They have they have 2 locations in Arizona. So they took this model and created it, and then made it bigger here.
I wanted to go back a little bit to ask you if you can talk a bit more about your own personal journey.
Yeah.
The diagnosis of being bipolar, and then some of the evolution of living with being bipolar. And I've also seen, at least on maybe one or more of your podcasts, that you consider it to be your superpower, or maybe one of your superpowers. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think everything I read about bipolar, it's like a new thing that I'm like, oh, that's me. So like a lot of empathy. I think that's what makes me a good storyteller. And I think that's one of my superpowers. So I think that, and then just always being creative and all that. And that's the big thing, being creative without the negativity. So with my treatment, I see a therapist, psychiatrist. I try to work out as much as I can. I take medication. So that's all a part of me being healthy as well. But the big turning point for me was when I was working at a company. I started telling people that I have bipolar disorder, because I'm an honest person, even though I knew that was probably the end of me at this place. But HR then found out and said, well, if you tell other people, you will make them feel uncomfortable. So then I'm like, oh no, this is a terrible thing. So I didn't tell anyone for 2.5 years. And it wasn't until I was done with that job that I told another business that I was working with that I have bipolar disorder too. And they said, yeah, whatever you need and all that. Then I felt good. Like, it's not a bad thing. So then I said it publicly, and it was scary at first, but a lot of people are supportive of it. And I'm still the same person. It doesn't change. I'm getting treatment for helping it, but I still do the same stuff I've done. So hopefully people don't look at me differently.
Maybe we can explore that a little bit more, because, the tone from the top, or the leadership in a company, and the opportunity to be open and transparent and respect each other can create very different cultures. And it sounds like these are two examples. So do you find, how do you see that? Because again, I think this comes back to, respect for our common humanity, our differences, our challenges. So just wondering how you see that kind of tone from the top in companies, and how it might very much help, to provide the best of each team member, who are being their authentic selves and respecting each other.
Yeah, I think the place I was working at, they had like the culture of fear. Like everyone was scared to do something different and say something different, or they could get fired or get a job. And so people are scared of there. And you can't have that. You got to take risks, creative risks and all that, and have people not fear of being themselves. So that's challenging. I think you need a culture of empathy, really, because if you're hiring these people, you're hiring them for a reason. Let them shine. They're going to make you look good. And that increases revenue. Everyone's happy. Yeah. So I think that's the culture we need.
And it's interesting when you say increases revenue, because for some, that's the point they need to hear. It's not the bigger picture. It is that. And there is a real business imperative. And, there's been a lot of work. I, have a ton of respect for what's going on at The Real, or the growth of their platform, and Sean Lesser and everyone. And they're, part of that is also to raise a lot of capital for mental health related companies and different solutions. And then there's this brain economy initiative too, which is also about, again, showing the power of brain capital and brain health. Yeah. And this can be pointing to the bottom line, which for some is going to be the driver to say, okay, we've got to really open it up, and we've got to get to the respect that should be there anyway, because there is a real business imperative too.
Yeah, sometimes people enjoy the empathetic aspect, like, great, I'm helping people, but other people care about the bottom line, and you could do both.
You can do both. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd like to talk to you a bit about and ask your views on self-talk, because I've found that is a massive issue. And again, if people are not feeling that they are, are not able to express themselves, or as you did at one point, felt restricted from telling people that you're bipolar, the self-talk can really bring people up or bring people down. And so I wanted to ask you some of your views on self-talk for people with mental health challenges and conditions, and how that with all the different people you're interviewing, how some of them are kind of talking about good solutions for that, or how we deal with that.
Yeah, on my podcast, I always ask people, what do they do for their own mental health? And they talk a lot about what they do to help themselves. But that's a lot of things. Like, I have tons of self-talk that doesn't help any situation. So I need to find the positivity out of something. And, hearing a compliment from someone, that could get me out of a bad situation or out of my head. Because before the medication, all that, it felt like it was like the stock market. So it was just nonstop voices yelling and everything. So once I got that controlled and not all the voices, it has helped me, but just talking to people of what they do to relax and all that, that's a good way to not be in your head all the time.
No, it's such an important point. And I also want to ask you a bit about the concept of purpose. For me, I've created the podcast kind of framed around, it's just one idea as a reference point, one idea that hopefully is helpful to some. But the fact that, one of the ways to, I think, get out of or to see a light at the end of the tunnel or have some type of North Star when we're really challenged is to focus on a purpose that means something to us. It doesn't necessarily have to mean something to everybody around you, but something to us that could be a dream or a relative or a goal or just something that you're saying, I'm going to fight to during my healing journey because I have this really important objective. And so I wanted to ask you just for any comments or thoughts on that type of concept of people focusing on, their one of their purposes or a key purpose.
Yeah, for me is amplification. So I want more of these stories out there. So my purpose is to talk to as many people and also get my story out there because I think that could help people. So I'm in more groups. I'm going to do in our own voice presenter for NAMI. So I'm going to get my voice out there too. But my purpose is to tell people that you're not alone if you're going through a mental health issue, and you're not different or strange or anything like that. So helping hear from other people, I think, is my mission and my passion and my purpose.
Fantastic. And what do you think about social media overall and in terms of the impact on mental health and also for younger people? Because certainly we have access to more information than we've ever had. We're aware of the really challenging things going on around the world. And, I've got a few kids, and so they're growing up in a different world than I have. And I've read a lot about this too. I'm interested in your views on social media and kind of healthy usage and how you think it's affecting people in society and their ability to balance their mental health.
Yeah, I have a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, so they're not quite at the edge of social media, but I would think about that, and it has a negative impact sometimes, but there's also good in it. Like nonprofits, they get to hear, they had to wait for a TV station to cover them. Now they don't. They could get their message out right away. So you got to use it to, I think, help people and try to focus away on people saying negative things and all that, which is very difficult. I'm not saying that's easy, but there is some good. So it's always good to try to harness that more and bring that more worldwide or wide.
And how are you also finding your guests now? I mean, you've done this for a long time. You've done many episodes. You're very visible. So I imagine there's actually, there's no shortage. There's so many incredible people with amazing stories and journeys to talk to. But how are you finding in general your guests?
Well, the place I found you is one of the really good ones, LinkedIn. So I see a lot of posts about people with mental health journeys or just having a great story, because I don't want to not include anyone that wants to share their story. Let's talk. So, but LinkedIn is one. I try to do social media, Facebook, Google search. There's a website called Great Nonprofits. So I look for a lot of nonprofits because mental health leaders are creating something. And then education platforms and the big nonprofits like NAMI and Mental Health America. So I try to research all I can, because that's a part of my background with broadcasting is you got to find that story no matter what. So you got to look all over the place.
And if you had to characterize, the evolution of societal acceptance and lowering stigma over the last 2 or 3 years. Are you optimistic about what you're seeing overall, and how do you see it going forward in the next next 2 to 3, 5 years type of thing?
I am very optimistic because I talk to younger people, young adults, teens, for interviews, and they are very open about their emotional health, seeing a therapist. And if they're open, their friends are going to be open and all that. So it's going to, hopefully, you have the older people who are scared to talk about everything mental health related, but you have these young people who are super open, and that's going to help inspire others. So I am very optimistic is the younger people are going to help.
I wanted to bring up a quick example, and it's not somebody I've had a chance to have on the podcast yet, but I did speak to her, and I found it quite interesting. Somebody I saw on Instagram who is basically a tightrope walker and is able to walk on a tightrope between mountains in Europe. So very courageous woman, but she has a deathly fear of needles for injections and things like that. And so I find it very interesting as an example of somebody who also is very transparent about their humanity. They may be a superhuman person in one sense, and yet they can't be in everything. It's somebody who has these fears. So I think, to me, it's a bit of an analogy of people who are, they're highly functional, but they have a mental health condition or challenge that in different circumstances can pose real challenges that they have to monitor and address. But I was just wanting to bring that up as what I find is an interesting example, and just ask you if that anything comes to mind with, again, the many people that you've interviewed that, in terms of the challenges that one or two of them might have had, of dealing with their mental health condition.
Yeah, it is like walking a tightrope. So it's people, I've talked to people where it's been challenging for their families to understand what they're going through. And those stories are tough. But usually those stories have a happier ending that the parents finally understand what they're going through. But I think that's one of the challenges of being open with yourself. But maybe that's a negative aspect for your family or friends.
Mm. And that is a huge point too. Obviously, the environment or the family and how they're affected, and then vice versa, right? In terms of the environment that affects somebody who's battling a particular condition. So I'm wondering if there's anything else that you'd like to bring up today, from your work, your personal story, any of the other amazing stories that you've shed light on with so many people and organizations. We've covered a lot of ground, and happy to cover a bit more, but wondering what comes to mind in terms of other things you might want to mention.
For me is just continuing the mission and talking to more people. So hope people trust me with their story, and I would like to talk to more people. I want to talk to more nonprofits. I want to speak more. So there's a lot of things. I want to create my own media company. I want to be the next Ted Turner. So there's a lot of things I want to do in the future, and I'm excited to, maybe be step one of step 1,000.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'm getting closer.
Right. No, that's amazing. Well, I'm really glad we could chat today, Mike. Congratulations for all that you're doing, for sharing your story, for bringing to light so many other stories and so many, important organizations. And I appreciate you letting me be on your podcast too. And I look forward to keeping in touch, and that, all of us as a broader community keep chipping away at stigma and at, giving people a hand up in whatever ways we can on their healing journeys, and other people knowing or hearing and believing that they're not alone, that we are all human, and we can all face some big challenges, but when we face it collectively, we can get through. So again, if there's any last thing you want to say, I'm happy to give you the floor. But I just wanted to thank you for joining today.
Thank you. And if anyone wants to watch my stuff, it's youtube.com/@PiZetta Media.
That's great. I'm going to put that on my own YouTube channel too, so people have the link directly and on the LinkedIn page, because definitely I'm going to continue looking at Mike's podcasts. I learned a lot and then been inspired. So I want to, encourage people to do the same. So Mike, great to see you. And thanks so much for sharing your stories today.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Thanks.